This took place about 2 years ago, before the outbreak. My mental health and my relationship with my parents were not good at the time. It was hard for me because I often felt alone and not understood, which made things even worse. It gets even worse because one of my good friends has moved away. We had gone on a few dates together. We were close, so it was a shock to lose him that way. I remember being numb and empty after the loss and not being able to deal with it. In the end, I started having bad thoughts. One thing was always the same, even though I don't remember everything that happened in each one. No matter where I was, the room would get darker and darker. Since all of my dreams are from my own point of view, I felt like a strange dark haze was coming into my vision. What was even worse was that the whole room would go dark, like in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf gets mad at Bilbo and everything goes dark all at once. That's the best way I can explain it. In my dream, though, it was even darker and heavy. It would then make me feel cold and heavy in the stomach, along with total fear, even though I couldn't see anything else and nothing had happened yet. Then, if there were people in my dream before, they would drop out of the picture when it got dark. Or, all of them would stare at me with blank, dead faces in an instant. It's scary enough to have one bad dream, but this happened every single time. People would have been looking at me if they hadn't gone away. It would then feel this way. You might have felt that strange pins and needles feeling when your arm or leg fell asleep. This is kind of like that, but worse, and it gets heavier as it goes on. I feel like someone or something is squeezing me so hard that it's killing me. It even feels like it's choking me sometimes when it's on my throat. I'm really scared and think there is darkness all around me. A lot of the time I hear a loud buzzing sound in my head, like when you hear junk on the TV mixed with the sound of cicadas. You can't think, talk, or fight against it at all. The cycle will keep going until I can free myself and wake up. But that's not always where the fear ends. I could sometimes not fall back to sleep after being awake for an hour or two, because the dream would start over where it left off if I tried, and whatever was making it happen would keep doing it. In the end, I stopped talking to my parents in 2021 and went through a lot of hard living situations and big life changes that I won't talk about. I finally moved in with my best friend who has a small house out in the country. We'll call her Amelia. The friend in question is very religious and a truly wonderful person all around. I slept on a very small cushion in the small loft of her home, which was upstairs. Like she often did for another friend, Amelia babysat overnight one night, leaving me alone in the cabin to try to rest. I hadn't had one of those dreams in over a month. For some reason, my dreams start slowly most of the time. This time, though, it was like being thrown into a movie without knowing what was going on. It all happened quickly. There wasn't time to figure out what was going on. It's clear to me that I stumbled out of the cabin, jumped into my Jeep, and sped down the dark back roads where I used to live. I almost went crazy. A few times I was in charge of the car, but I kept going fast while frantically calling Amelia on the phone. I told her I was going to drive myself to the hospital because I was really sick and something bad was going to happen. Her voice began to fade as she asked what was wrong. I heard a low, scary growling voice instead. It talked to me in my ear in strange words I didn't understand. It didn't sound like the phone at all. I looked in the dashboard rearview mirror, but then the scary part of the dream came true. My Jeep's headlights went out all of a sudden and I couldn't turn them back on. It was getting in the way of my view. At that point, though, my dream did something different for the first time ever. A big hand went through the back of my head and through my hair. Because it was so big, I thought its palm could easily cover the back of my head, close to my neck. But its fingers still touched my face. I could even feel claws brushing against my skin. When the hand reached for some of my hair at the back of my head, it pulled my head back hard until I was pushed against the car seat. I felt like something heavy was pushing down on me, and the growling was getting louder. I was so scared that I thought I was screaming but wasn't. I had my mouth open very wide, but nothing was coming out. No matter what it was, I knew it hated me very much. After that, I remembered what Amelia told me about these dreams when I talked to her about them. She taught me the Lord's Prayer and told me to ask God to keep me safe through the Holy Spirit and Saint Michael. This is something I've never done before. There was a time when I begged God to help me. I told him I would always believe in him if he helped me beat this thing and get rid of it. When I cried out to God, the hold on my hair began to weaken. I thought this thing was letting go, but it was moving slowly, like it didn't want to. The noise in my ears and the strange feeling in my stomach began to go away. I finally woke up all the way. I quickly got up and looked up at the stairs and window in the loft. I saw it. It was the first time I saw it in real life, not in a dream. The house doesn't have any light. Don't forget that I'm on the second floor. Its two red eyes were looking at me from the chimney window, so I knew that thing was it. There were big red lines all over, and the whites of their eyes were also red. The only thing I could see was its head, which was a strange shape. But the fact that it was looking at me from a window on the second floor, where there were no trees or air conditioners to stand, said it all. The thing that looked in through that window had to be over 8 feet tall. I called Amelia right away, so she would listen to me talk about my dream. I asked her to stay on the phone with me. Even though it was 3 a.m., Amelia could start her journey back because her friend was home. I put her on speakerphone and prayed loudly for me while she prayed. She also told me to burn some white sage. Soon the cabin stopped feeling scary and dark. Everything was back to normal by the time she got home. I began going to church with Amelia after that night. I often prayed with her, and I even made up my own prayer to say every night before bed. I no longer have those thoughts as long as I say the prayer, and I moved into a new room by myself since then. I haven't seen or felt that thing since then. I still pray every night and talk to Amelia. You know, some people might think this is crazy or that I can't believe that thing was a monster. However, I must say that you know when you're really up against something bad, something that wants you to know it's bad and wants to hurt you badly. I spent a lot of time at my friend James's house when I was younger. I liked him a lot and thought of him as a brother. Since I didn't have any siblings and didn't get along with my parents, I spent as much time as I could at James's house. They would sometimes act like they didn't like us going to the backyard, where he had a small man cave, because we always did. We played video games on the couch in that nice room, but his parents would get mad if I spent too much time with him. James's dad would come down, knock on the door, open it, and act like James had to go to bed. He said things like that, but we knew he only wanted me to leave. I would leave right away whenever his dad came down and knocked loudly on the door. I didn't want to bother them because that was the only place I felt at ease or at home. After that, I went back to my house, which was awful. Every time I did something wrong, my mom would yell at me about the sink, dirty dishes, dirty clothes, and anything else. She always had something bad to say, which made me feel very stressed. She would get angry over little things and start to complain. It was hard for me to deal with her. I think she was just letting out some stress. It wasn't fun at all for me as an 18-year-old guy who was still trying to figure out his life. I couldn't drive at this time, so I walked to James's place. It took me about 10 minutes to walk to his house, or 3 or 4 minutes to run. There was nothing I liked more than running in the summer. It made me smell bad when I got to his house. I hate going to bed wet, so if I ran back home before bed, I'd have to take a shower. I stayed at James's house that night until around midnight. I looked at my phone and then at James. We both smiled because we knew that his dad would soon knock on the door to tell me to leave. That's why I chose not to have that happen. To keep their good mood, I would leave early tonight. It could make his family like me more. Because I was leaving, I told James. Before I left, we shook hands. It was completely dark outside because it was midnight when I walked down their road. Around the middle of my walk, as I got closer to my own street, I heard some strange sounds ahead. Someone seemed to be grunting or groaning. It sounded like the sounds were coming from a few yards ahead of me, so I kept walking and listening carefully. There was more and more noise as I got closer. There were trees between the two paths. I call them walks, but they're really just dirt roads that go next to houses. It was hard to see what was ahead or in the next yard because of the bushes. When I finally got close enough, I thought I could reach out and touch it. The noise seemed to be coming from the other side of the last bush I had to go through. To get a better look at what was making those grunting sounds, I slowed down and naturally stepped into the road. I saw some gray hair as I walked by the bush. It looked like an old woman's hair. I kept walking, and to my surprise, there was an old woman, maybe in her 80s, grunting and groaning on the front lawn. Right away, I rushed to help her because it felt right. She was in the recovery position when I carefully moved her there. I only knew how to do that. We learned that in high school, or maybe even grade school, if I remember right. She didn't say anything, not reacting at all, just grunting. I left her there because I didn't know what else to do. I hoped it was the right thing to do. The doctors got there in about 5 minutes, but it felt like 50. I've never felt so tired in 5 minutes. I thought over and over that I was in charge of this woman's life. I had never had to do anything like this or done CPR before. I just knew that putting her in the resting position would help. It would have been scary if she had died while I was there. Thank goodness she didn't. The doctors came and took her away. Even though I only talk to James when I'm in my neighborhood, I wave to her whenever I see her working in her garden. While I was walking back from James's house, I didn't expect to see her that way. I've done that walk a million times since then, though, and nothing strange has ever happened again. Let me talk a little about the scene before I start the story. It was nice to stay at a house in Ontario. This cottage was in a small neighborhood with 12 other houses. All of them were set up in a half circle around a nice park. There were big trees, a small playground, and a picnic place in the park. There was a beautiful lake nearby where people could swim, fish, and boat. My older brother and I made friends with a 14-year-old kid named Brandon while we were there. Brandon liked hanging out with us more than being with his family and would often go off by himself. I never knew why someone wouldn't want to be close to their parents when I was a kid. It could be because I used to be a bit of a goody-goody. I always did what my parents told me to do. Try to stay out of danger and always follow the rules. Also, I really don't like Brandon very much because he was a pain. However, he was friendly with my brother. I looked up to my brother so much that I would follow him around, even if it meant hanging out with Brandon. It made me feel like my brother was the coolest person in the world to want to do everything he did. Brandon finally thought of a way to sneak out, and my brother went with him. I had to join them because we shared a room. At first, we just went to the park and hung out for a while, enjoying the cool air blowing through the trees and the quiet night. However, we quickly got bored and wished we had done something more interesting. While I suggested that we end the night and go to bed, it was the older kids who made the choice. Brandon suggested that we go wandering in the woods. I tried to stop them, but they didn't listen to me. We were not excited to go into the woods, and the only thing that could lead us was the dim light from Brandon's phone. The woods weren't too thick, thank goodness. The freeway was only a few miles away, but you could hear it hum. I was ready to go back after a short walk, but I could only do two things. You can either walk back by yourself in the dark or stay with them. Things were quiet in the woods after a while. Not a cricket, not any owls, not even a breeze. We all stopped and paid attention after I said this. There was quiet for a few seconds before my brother spoke up, sounding annoyed. "I am trying to hear you." I told him I didn't make any noise because I didn't understand. He then said that my deep breathing sounded like a pig that was dying and told me to calm down. I was about to fight when I heard someone breathe. It felt heavy and sounded hard. I said in a whisper, "That's not me. I hear it too." My brother looked at me. The breathing then got louder, like it was getting excited. There were two lights above us. They were glowing brightly in a brilliant blue color and moving slowly from side to side. It was almost like we were under a spell because we couldn't take our eyes off of them. Suddenly, there was a chilling moan that sent shivers down our spines. The sound was like someone who had been smoking for years was trying to scream but was gasping for air. We then began to run. Behind us, we could hear trees shaking and twigs breaking. Whatever it was, it looked like it was in the trees. Because my feet are so small, I can't run too fast, so I knew I couldn't keep it up for long. Soon my legs hurt and I had to stop. My brother and Brandon kept running ahead, leaving me behind. No matter what it was still getting closer quickly. I jumped into a close bush. It wasn't my luck, though, because it turned out to be a thorn bush. I got cuts and scratches all over in a matter of seconds. So I wouldn't cry out in pain. I had to bite my lip. As I tried to remain silent, I heard something heavy hit the ground nearby in the bush. I was hidden in the bush and saw the two lights from before shining into the small opening where I was. These were not lights, though. They looked like eyes. With those eyes, I saw something that looked like it was from a scary dream. It was thin and about 7 feet tall. The color of its skin was dark gray. It had very long arms with claws at the ends. After looking around for a while, it stood there for a long time. I hid in that bush for hours. I didn't dare move until I saw the sun rise all the way above the horizon. After getting strong, I ran in the direction I thought the cabin was. I didn't care that the thorn bush had torn my clothes to pieces or that I was bleeding a lot. As I ran through the bush for what seemed like forever, I didn't pay attention to how my legs felt like they were on fire. I jumped out of the woods and landed on a busy highway. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with loud machines and worried people all around me. Someone must have seen me coming out of the woods in torn clothes and called for help. They didn't believe me when I told them what happened. Everyone thought I was crazy because I had been in the woods for too long, but I held firm. I wasn't home when my brother got home. He told me what happened in the morning. Then a search party was put together before they got the call to come get me. It's been more than 7 long years since those scary events, and I've spent countless hours searching the internet for anything that could help me figure out who that strange creature was.